Hey, a lot of my followers on Instagram and elsewhere have asked me, hey, what is this thing? What does it do? Well, it is an Empress ZOIA. And what it does is going to take me an entire video to explain. I've actually had one for a bit now, and I've been programming some sounds for it and beta testing it, and I've already used it in a live show. I have already used it in my studio a whole bunch. It's kind of my companion now. I really, really love it. I was initially going to make a science fiction-esque artificial intelligence fun little video for this, but it seems like a lot of people had made some really, really cool videos already on the product, and that coincides perfectly with the fact that I really didn't feel like it. What I can tell you right off the bat is that as of April of 2019, the Empress ZOIA is indisputably the most powerful pedal ever made. And with great power comes great responsibility and reading a manual and learning a user interface that you're not used to. And you're gonna have to do that. To be transparent and fair, due to my relationship with Empress and my close relationship with the product, I am not reviewing it. It would be unfair for me to review it. I can tell you that I really like it. I can tell you that if you are a synthesizer owner who likes to buy effects pedals, this is an absolute no-brainer. I can tell you that if you're a type of person who likes to buy boutique guitar effects pedals, this is an absolute no-brainer. The only person I would think that you might want to be on the fence for is if you don't really care about effects all that much, which is totally fine. But if you're the type of person who, you know, plays out of a mono cab or something like that with maybe one distortion pedal, this might be a bit overkill and it may just be a lot of learning for something you won't use. But for anybody who's watching this channel, this might be the most highly recommended product yet. It's pretty rad. In this video, I'm gonna try and burn through using it as a guitar pedal and creating your own effect from scratch on it, using it as a synthesizer with MIDI going into it, and then using it as a generative music maker by showing you some of the presets that I've made. Hopefully, I do a good job. And I would like to say right now that I kind of want to do a live stream if a bunch of people have questions. I'd like to schedule that for when I get back from this next leg of tour. So without further ado, let's finally take a look at the Empress ZOIA. I feel like the best way to show you what the ZOIA does is to start at the most basic function, and that is just being a guitar pedal. So I have a guitar coming into the left input, and then I have a stereo output coming. Right now there's nothing on, we just have a dry signal. So let's try to make a reverb pedal. I like reverb a whole bunch. I'm gonna click a button here, and that's where I'm gonna put my first module, interface modules. And that will be audio input. And I'm only coming into the left side, so my channel is left. And that's it, there's just one. Okay, then I'm gonna have an output. Interface modules, audio output, coming out of stereo. Done. Okay, so I like organizing things like this because I'm gonna have stuff in the middle as I create effects. So that's our input, that's our output. Here, I'm gonna actually, I'm going to create reverbs usually at the end, right? So I'm going to create some reverb, effects modules. Let's just go with Hall reverb. It's already on that. Let's change the color to something a little more friendly than red. Magenta. Okay. So this is our reverb module. Doesn't look like anything, but check it out. That's our input left, input right, the decay time. This is some EQing. This is the mix. This is output left, output right. So our output right I'm going to hold that down and click this. That's connected. I'm going to hold down the output left, connected. Now, reverb in. I'm only coming in from the left channel again, so I'm going to connect this to both left and right reverb in. And now, as easy as that, I should have sounds pretty good. While we're doing this, I really want to show you that these modules are no joke. For example, this reverb algorithm is a great, absolutely stunning sounding reverb. All right, so let's make this a little bit more interesting. I'm going to choose a flanger, and my flanger's color will be, well, how about yellow? Yellow is a good color for a flanger. Now the control, I'm just going to have a rate, because you could have it controlled as tap tempo or CV direct or things like that. So I'm just going to have a rate, and it's going to operate like a normal flanger. I used to call it a flanger when I was a teenager, before I knew how to talk. So you have, 1960s through 0. You have a couple different options here. So let's go with 70s, and it's in. So now it's not connected to anything yet. So what we need to do, this is the part that I had a little bit of trouble with figuring out, but that's why we're doing this here. I need to disconnect this input from here, because this is now in front of it in the chain. So I'm going to select this and this at the same time. That is my audio input into the reverb input, and I am going to delete it. Oh, sorry, I should actually show you how I'm deleting it. Press that down. I'm holding down this little shift key, and then the garbage. Okay, gone. There's nothing going on anymore. So now we have flanger input left, flanger input right. This is flanger output left into reverb input left. This is flanger output right into reverb input right. All right, let's listen. Let's make it a little more extreme. There you go. So guess what? I don't like flangers. So I'm going to delete this whole thing. I'm just going to press anywhere that is the flanger. Then I'm going to hold down that shift, garbage can, boom, flanger's gone, no more flanger. Let's put in a different effect here. And let's put in a ring mod. Okay. So we've got a ring mod, waveform sine. You have a bunch of, I do like upsampling. That's good. And we will, so we have only one audio in, and we should only have one audio out. And so that can go to both reverb inputs. And now we should okay, that's a ring mod. Not that cool, but it will be cool if we do something. So let's just do something basic to start. I'm going to take this. I'm going to go to control modules. I'm going to just choose an LFO. The LFO will be a sine wave, and that's all. And that will control the frequency of the ring modulator. So this is the LFO output. Select that at the same time. And now we have okay, so it's a little too extreme. So I'm going to select both of these at the same time. And now I could actually bring the decibels down. So now it'll be a little less abrasive. Well, it'll still sound very abrasive, but what we are doing and accomplishing here is that it's attenuating the signal into the LFO control. And then I could also set the baseline. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this LFO. Delete. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down to analysis modules. And I am going to use an envelope follower. Envelope follower, rise fall time. Let's just go with the default color white. Okay. So I'm going to connect the CV output of the envelope follower to the frequency of the ring modulator. And the input is just going to be connected to my audio in. So I should have so now we have something that's kind of controlled. Now, the reason I did this way is so I could show you. If I want to change, this is my envelope follower. If I want to change some of the settings, I'm going to select Shift and then that little pen, or I'm sorry, not the pen ordeal. I'm going to select the, what is that? Pencil and paper? I can't see it. Okay, I'm going to select that. There's going to be a rise fall time. I'm going to put that on. That's going to add more controls to it. So now I have a fall time of, let's say, 2 seconds. and then I have a rise time of, let's say, half a second, 500 milliseconds. Okay, so now we're not making anything amazing yet. I'm just showing you what this is capable of. I'm going to get rid of the envelope follower, trash, and I'm going to move this over here so I have a little bit more room. By doing that, I'm going to select the shift, and then select this, then shift. This will move it. I'll say move it. I want to move it right here. Boom. Okay. Now I'm going to put in a control module that is an entire sequencer. And I'm going to have, let's go with 6 steps. 1 track. Yeah, that's good. We don't need anything more complicated than that. So the sequencer, it's going to have a gate input, which we'll get to in a second. The CV output is going to go right back into the frequency of the ring modulator. However, this sequencer needs something to give it a clock. And to give it a clock, I'm just going to go directly to control modules. I'm going to go to LFO. In LFO, I'm going to go to square. Okay, great. See that blinking? That's our clock. We could also set BPM, milliseconds, anything like that over here by just pushing this down. We get different options. So I'm going to go to the gate input. Now we have a sequencer that's actually moving around. However, we need to actually make some different things here. Some different notes. I don't know how to speak, apparently. All right, and now this is a patch I made for myself. I don't know if it's going to be included in the shipment of the ZOIA, but it's incredibly helpful. I like tuning by ear to another tone rather than looking at a screen. And check this out. It automatically quantizes the input. And then I get to just tune to the quantized saw wave. I get to hear the drift. So, in my opinion, there it is. Get to hear the cycling when you're off by even a couple cents. And then you have a perfectly tuned guitar. In my opinion, this is superior to tuning with something that just shows you what note you're playing. But good to know. Great example of quick things that you could build that help you out as a musician. This is a patch I made that I named L-Switch Freeze. I don't know if it's going to be called that in your ZOIA, but that's what I named it. And we have a audio input similar to the examples we've been using thus far. We have a stop switch CV output that is going to the gate in of 3 different sequencers because I've created a sort of a ghetto logic gate sort of situation. You'll see what it does in a second. Over here we have a VCA, and then over here, I didn't show you this yet. If you press this, these page buttons, brings you to a whole new page. You could have a bunch of pages. These patches could go very, very deep. This one has a hall reverb, plate reverb, audio mixer, then audio out. Let's go back to the first page, and I'll show you what this patch does. All right, so I'm playing the guitar, man. Then I'm going to press this. Then I'm going to press it again so I could just jam over it without freezing anything. And then when I'm done, I could just, there you go, and then it goes away. You could customize the reverb sound, the mixer levels, the effects that are being triggered by the freeze, literally anything. that is kind of the point of the ZOIA. Again, I'm not really sure which patches will be on the ZOIA you get. I kind of delivered some of these last minute. I don't know if they made it to manufacturing. If that is the case, let me know in the comments if you see something you like, and I'll throw the files up for you. So this one's called Bliss Flowers. Kind of reminds me of the music of Far Cry 5, so I named it that. And yeah, let's just... So to give you a quick rundown of how this works, we have a filter that is controlled by an LFO, sort of making the higher notes in that shimmer, making them modulate a bit so they don't sound cheesy and that sort of weird sound that most shimmers have. So there's no synthesis happening, but it kind of sounds like there's a pad playing in the background. This has only 2 pages. Wow, I'm keeping things low. Some of my patches have a lot of pages, as you will soon find out. I think I'm done with the guitar. I think we're ready to graduate onto... All right, so maybe you're not a guitarist. What you can do is you could go MIDI in. So let's just start going with the MIDI in from this cheapo MIDI controller that I have here. And I will, you know what? Let's make a synth from scratch. I don't know how many times I've done that on this channel, but you should definitely be sick of it by now. Okay, so instead of an audio input, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Interface Modules. I'm going to go to MIDI Notes In. Boop. That will be green. MIDI channel 1, number of outputs 1, priority newest. All right, let's just do that. Okay, so those are my MIDI inputs. We could see it working. We should have the note out and the gate out. Sweet, got it. Okay, now I'm going to create an oscillator, audio module, oscillator. Let's go with, let's be fun. Let's use sawtooth. Sines are boring. Okay, so there's an oscillator. It's a sine wave. I'm going to put the output down here just so I have sort of an end of chain that I know to organize around. Audio output. All right, got the output. Now we shall maybe put in a VCA. So we have something which is a voltage controlled amplifier. So we have that VCA, and then we'll put a filter because that saw wave is going to be mighty abrasive. So let's just use a multi-filter, low pass. Okay, so here's our filter, here's our VCA, here's our oscillator, here's our MIDI input, and here is our output. All right, so, we need an envelope. Duh. Control modules. Here is our envelope, adsr. All right, here's our adsr. Okay, so if you're not used to synths, this is the part you're going to want to pay attention to. All right, so we have... Let's figure out how this chain is going to go. So we have our note out from the MIDI controller. That's going to go to the oscillator frequency. Okay, connected. Now, that's our oscillator audio out. Oscillator audio out is going to go into the voltage controlled amplifier input, but first I want it to go into the filter. So filter in, filter out goes into voltage controlled amplifier in. Voltage controlled amplifier out goes into the output. Okay, so now if I do this, we should be able to hear it. There you go. So we want, when we press a key, we want the gate to start and stop the sound, right? Because otherwise it's just always playing and that would be really dumb. So what we're going to do, this is the gate out from the MIDI input of the keyboard. We are going to have that trigger the gate input on the ADSR or envelope. All right, now the CV output of the ADSR will go into the voltage control amplifier level control. This sounds way more complicated than it is. Once you do it once, you'll be like, oh, duh, got it. All right, so now we should have, all right, let's turn the attack down. We can make it really
really short sounds. Now you know what an envelope does. Okay, and here's our filter. Oh, sorry, that's not our filter. That's our filter. We have resonance. All right, so we have a monophonic synthesizer now and a guitar pedal. However, let's do something that we did earlier. Let's throw in some control modules. So I'm going to throw in an LFO. Wherever that is, up here. Okay. LFO, let's go with sine wave. I'm going to throw that into the cutoff of the filter, which isn't the most exciting way to use an LFO, but... All right, if we move this all the way down, make some sick dubstep. So what we just made there was a subtractive synthesizer. This one is a West Coast style synthesizer, a very simple version of it, and sounds much more abrasive. Also made a 4-operator FM. It should be a bass sound by default. There you go. There's your 80s bass. So yeah, there's a 4-operator FM, and if we were to change some of these multiplier figures, these are all sort of work with the tone so it stays tonal. If we were to change these around a bit. You can make absolutely insane sounds using FM. If you don't know how FM synthesis works, somewhere on this channel I made a very long tutorial on showing you how to make FM stuff from scratch. Check that out. Apply it here. It's not that hard. This is a more sound designy type of FM. It's not exponential, it's linear, but I set it up a little bit differently for physical modeling purposes. And essentially it's a different algorithm. Whew, that hurts. It is a broken bell. Some of the patches I made are tutorials to help you on your own ZOIA journey, rather than just neat patches to play with. And this is one of them. This is a MIDI looper, and it works a little differently than you would imagine. It doesn't only loop. So for example, if I play a chord. All right, now. And if I press different keys afterwards, we get to play with the harmony. By the way, you don't actually need a MIDI keyboard. This is just a simple Boards of Canada wannabe patch, and you could just use the buttons. Huh. I actually don't like the way that sounds. You know what? I bet if I upsampled my oscillator, I would. Let's try that out. Done. That's a bit better. Okay, so these are some patches I made that are a little more insane. And I'm running a beta firmware on this right now, so they may actually go over the CPU allocation because there might be a memory leak in here somewhere. So let's check this out. Here's all the pages: mixer, kick, snare, hi-hat, polyrhythm, and logic. It's basically a drummer that just makes its own beats. This one is an ambient soundscape using some physical modeled chimes that I made using FM on here. And you can tell that this has quite a few pages. It has like an AI melody generator, a Boolean logic generator, even has wind in there, subtle ring, things like that. So, but you could just listen to this one and eat dinner. Or maybe just sit at your table not eating dinner. That's probably what this would be better for, just sitting at your table with no food, wishing you had dinner. Ooh, this one's definitely CPU clipping. I'm using a lot of poly in this one. I have a lot of oscillators and a lot of sequencers, sequencing each key in each oscillator. I hear it clipping a little bit. Should be fixed by the time you get it. Yeah, another patch that you could just listen to while wishing that you had food on the table, just staring at an empty plate. This is definitely an unoptimized version of this patch, but what it's doing is using a ton of LFOs to drive this melody. It almost sounds like vinyl, the clipping. Sorry about that. This one's called Am I Conscious? And it is probably my favorite one that I made because it's this nice little melody that takes this dark arc every now and then. And it's almost completely generative, so it'll never sound the same twice. I just want to take a moment to point out that I'm talking about a song that will never sound the same twice being generated by a guitar pedal. I spent so much time on this one trying to optimize it and get it to run properly, but it is a touring machine, a real synthesized touring machine that generates a melody, then borrows a little bit from the last loop that it generated and applies it to the new loop, which is, sort of a human thing to do, I guess. And so it sounds a little more human-made, even though it's 100% AI. I spent a comical amount of time on this trying to get a 303 style synthesizer and sequencer on this pedal, but check it out. If you select these, you could and if you want to select the oscillator, you can even change the waveform. If you want to go to an acid saw instead of a, there you go. And the different pages, we have 303 sequencer, kick, drum sequencer, snare, and the mixer at the end. If you wanted to change this to sound nothing like a 303, you could just mess with the attack. Change the oscillator to something that a 303 doesn't have. Like a sine wave, which would be the most boring acid you could ever make. Yeah, so that's my 303 patch. So you got all that down. What I'm going to try and do now is attempt to tell you what all the modules do as quickly as possible. So, boom, let's go down the list. Interface modules. Audio input, obvious. Audio output, obvious. MIDI notes in, we already did that. MIDI CC in, that is a MIDI controller, like a knob. MIDI pressure, that is sort of like aftertouch, how hard you're pressing a key, for example. MIDI CC out, MIDI PC out. That's from MIDI out of the ZOIA if you are controlling another synthesizer from the ZOIA. MIDI note out, same thing. Stop switch, that's basically sends a signal to do something, I guess, anything in the pedal. You just select that stop switch and turn on or off an effect or trigger a synthesizer or whatever you want. Pixel, I believe, just allows you to have a button light up with a CV input. The UI button, that is essentially a button on your UI. A push button is a little different because you could set it to be momentary or a latch or things like that. Keyboard, that is where you can play a keyboard on the buttons themselves. A control port CV in, control port CV out. That is actually to work with a modular synthesizer or a foot controller, for example, which this certainly does. But I'm not going to go entirely there today because that would be a 15-hour video. All right, audio modules. We have an oscillator. You know what that is. That's just a synth tone or tone generator. We have a voltage control amplifier, which allows you to shut the oscillator on and off at a more gentle rate. You have an SV filter, which This one can be kind of a multiple filter that has multiple outs. So you could have like a high pass out and a low pass out in the same filter. You have a multi-filter, which is just a one output filter, but it can be a high pass, band pass, low pass. A delay line. A delay line basically just adds some delay into your patch. So if you had a guitar coming in or something like that, it would just add 300 milliseconds of delay. That would be very good to have the delay go to a different effect while you had your main signal going into a different channel on the mixer on the ZOIA. Audio panner, pans audio, pitch shifter, that shifts pitch. Audio balance, that's left-right. What's the difference between that and panner? Oh, okay, you could sum to mono with audio balance. Audio mixer, it's a mixer. It's very functional. I use it in almost all my patches. Inverter, that inverts audio. Audio in switch and audio out switch, that might be new. I haven't used that before. I assume that it does what the name says, that it just switches when it detects audio, but I might be wrong, so maybe I'll put some text on the screen explaining that while I'm saying nothing through this part because I didn't do my homework properly for this video, so you can just read the text there and it tells you what they do. Okay, it should be done by now. All pass filter, that is kind of, if you want to be very specific with your filtering, and all pass filter is good, you could add different points, and that's a highly editable filter as well. Noise generator, that's just going to sound like audio multiplier, bit crusher, aliaser. Those are all sort of waveform folding, distortion-esque effects. One buffer delay sort of smooths sound a little bit in case it's clipping. I should have used it in that patch, for example, that has the CPU clipping going on, but I could have also optimized the patch, which would have been better. Looper, yes, this can be a loop pedal. It's going to be a very, very, very powerful loop pedal. Stereo spread, that sort of makes the stereo more stereo. Bit modulator, that is sort of a low bit effect. And diffuser is almost like a comb filter. It's very unique on this. It's different than, it's not really an actual diffuser, and it's also not a comb filter. It's somewhere in between. I've tried making some Car Plus Strong patches with it, which is they sound pretty abrasive and crazy. Control modules, there are a bunch. There is a low frequency oscillator for, controlling wow, 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 vibrato, things like that. There is a sequencer. There is an adsr envelope, which you're going to need for any synthesis patch. There is a sample and hold, which I hope you know what a sample and hold does if you're watching this. I feel like explaining a sample and hold. How do I explain a sample and hold in a way that isn't absolutely ridiculous? All right, so I have a very crazy, chaotic tone coming here, and then I have a beat. And the crazy, chaotic tone the beat will capture it and sample it, and then hold it until the next beat. So instead of sounding crazy, it will sound more organized. That was probably awful. CV invert, that inverts CV. CV rectify, that sort of folds the CV in a way. I would have to give you an example to actually explain how it works. Value, that's just a value. That's basically if you want to set a value and then send it to multiple places. So if I had two different filters, I could just have that one value, and that way I only have to twist one knob to turn both of the cutoffs on both filters up. However, you could use it however you want. Trigger, that creates a trigger. CV flip-flop, that, I know I've used it. My brain is just shit. I guess it's not a CV inverter. I guess it's another one of those things where you'll see some text around here, and I'll, okay, CV delay, that just delays a signal at how much you set it. CV loop, that is how I made the MIDI looper. It's pretty much like a looper, but for control voltage. CV filter, that smooths CV a bit. That makes it sound, if you have some like abrasive LFOs or something like that, and you want it to sound a bit smoother, that's what CV filter does. Slew limiter is sort of a CV smoother, but much more controllable and probably more resource intensive. Clock divider, very, very powerful, that if you send, for example, a 200 BPM LFO into it, it'll divide it into, or multiply it, the divider can also multiply. You could have one output be 400 BPM, and then you could, or divide it into 50 BPM or anything like that. So comparator, that is a logic gate, essentially. An in switch, an out switch, that's similar to the audio in switch and out switch. Quantizer, It doesn't work the way that you might be used to if you're in the modular. It just quantizes to the nearest note, essentially, to just the nearest 12-note spectrum. You can't really set a scale. Yet, by the time you get your ZOIA, you probably will be able to. I know that it's coming in the future. I really, really hate to be announcing Empress updates that they haven't implemented yet, but I'm fairly certain that you will have scale quantizing in this within the month. Steps is very similar to quantizer. I'm not sure if it was taken out or if it has a functionality that I'm not remembering. Multiplier, CV multiplier, that essentially I use that a lot for FM, for example. Another great example of the multiplier is if you wanted to make an attenuator, you could just turn the multiplier down, turn it into a divider, and then you have a signal attenuator that you can control separately without having to edit the connection of your in and out. Random, that just sends random CV. And rhythm, that's sort of a rhythm generator. Sort of. Okay, so now we have our analysis modules. Onset detector, that's basically detects any sound coming into the pedal. You have your envelope follower, that is an envelope connected to a detector of anything that comes into the pedal. And you have your pitch detector, which is a very handy way of, for example, creating a monophonic synth that you could play with your guitar. Effect module. There's a whole bunch here, and they're all really great. Tone control, that's an equalizer, essentially. Delay with mod, that is sort of like a tape delay. Ping pong delay, it's kind of like a tape delay, or you could have it a digital delay. There's a lot of different settings in here that you could see here. You could have it clean or tape. And that is just ping pong, so it's more stereoized. Overdrive and distortion, fuzz, compressor, gate, plate reverb, hall reverb, room reverb, ghost verb. Plate reverb and hall reverb are probably the most powerful ones in this pedal. They use Empress's classic best in the world algorithms for reverb, and they just sound absolutely beautiful. Ghost verb uses the ghost verb, a similar algorithm to the ghost verb on the Empress reverb. Reverb light, that's a monophonic. I think it's still monophonic. Maybe not. Is it? Huh. Okay. It's not monophonic anymore. It was monophonic. Reverb light is a reverb that doesn't take a lot of resources. So it's nice to have if you don't need perfect sounding reverb, but you just want to wetten something up. Phaser, you know what that is. Chorus, you know what that is. Vibrato, you know what that is. Flanger, you know what that is. Tremolo, you know what that is. Envelope filter, that's pretty cool if you want to make a sort of funky sound with a filter. Ring modulator, that modulates a sort of all of your input with a sine. We played with it earlier in this video. And a cabinet simulator, which is an amp sim. And oh my god, I went through every single module in here. I thought I would give up halfway through that. Everybody has been asking me, what is that? What does that do? And I hope that this video gave you a very good overview of how it works. And in the future, depending on the final version of the manual and depending on how many questions I see people asking me to this video, I would not at all be opposed to doing a live stream and answering some of those questions. That would probably be really helpful, and I can sort of show you exactly what it is you need to do on this, because it is a very, very complicated pedal with a learning curve, but it's absolutely worth it. I didn't actually record the beginning of this video yet because I think that I'm Quentin Tarantino or something, but I probably will say when I record that this is the most powerful pedal in the world. So that learning curve is absolutely worth it, because even if you're just a guitarist who doesn't really care about synthesis, this is like Legos for effects. This is like a giant multi-effects unit in a tiny thing. And when you listen to the reverb on a Boss GT series or something like that, they're terrible. And this one has Empress quality reverb algorithms, so it's kind of a no-brainer for everyone. I mean, this is literally one of the products that I'm the most excited about in a very long time. It's the pedal that I'm the most excited about ever. So, all right, well, I'm gonna go to Nebraska. Bye.